Why should they have carried out clandestine operations? The fight against cigarette smuggling resembled a patently open war between the Italian tax police and a well-organized cigarette mafia. These images date back to the late 1990s. To combat this traffic, the EU entered into agreements with cigarette manufacturers, but a decade later, the results are unremarkable. The traffic continues. Along with several of his colleagues, MEP Bart Stas calls for the non-renewal of these non-transparent agreements with the tobacco industry. Bart Stas, hello and welcome. I was rather surprised with reading the amount of money in deals between the EU and tobacco companies. How big is the business in fact, and why are these agreements there?
The smuggling of counterfeit cigarettes amounts to around 10 billion euros a year. That are the figures of the European Commission. Cigarette smuggling is something that exists already for many years. In fact, we had a committee of inquiry here in European Parliament in the 90s, in 1996 and 1997. And the European Commission discovered that Philip Morris International was involved in cigarette smuggling and was really cooperating with the smugglers. And they started, together with 10 member states, a court case against Philip Morris International in the United States of America, in New York. And in 2004, the Commission, together with the member states, made a deal with Philip Morris International and concluded the first so-called tobacco agreement, in which Philip Morris agreed to pay for a period of 12 years the amount of $1.25 billion in global. And the second part of the agreement was that Philip Morris International would set up a tracing and tracking system and would be prepared to pay a certain amount each time that a smuggling container was being found.
It's not the only one. I have the figures here. Japan Tobacco International, 280 million. British American Tobacco, 27 million. Going on with 50 million for Imperial Tobacco Limited, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Why, in fact? What is the interest? Everybody knows you're fighting against tobacco the whole time. The deal continues.
Well, in 2004, the European Parliament welcomed the agreement, because at that moment it was being thought that this was a new style of fighting smuggling, of fighting counterfeit cigarettes. But in the meantime, the whole situation has changed. The Commission says already for years that the whole amount of smuggling costs the taxpayer 10 billion euros a year, and that doesn't decrease. So what is the impact of those agreements? Do they really have an impact? Is it really useful to make an agreement with a tobacco giant, knowing that tobacco giant started a process against the European Union on the new tobacco directive? We have the new tobacco directive of 2014, we have the protocol of the World Health Organization, and we should really decide if we would like to continue this tobacco agreement of 2004, because it stops normally at 2016.
There's another one going on until 2022.
Indeed,
normally.
Because they started later, and that were other agreements.
But so what is which power do you have to say today, no, we don't continue, we'll stop it?
My main point is we have new legislation, we have a new tobacco directive, we have the protocol and the agreement of the World Health Organization, and I would like to know, through the assessment of the Commission, if the tobacco agreements really are helpful in diminishing fraud, and there I am not sure that they do so.
But frankly said, what is the solution then? Smuggling is happening. It would be just not realistic to say it's not the case. So if you want to stop something there, you need a tool to do it. This was a tool, or a proposal at least. If you stop this, what do you have else?
Well, we have the new tobacco directive, we have new paragraphs and new tools to combat smuggling. We have the World Health Organization tool, which is a binding tool as well, which could be very useful, not only to combat that kind of smuggling on a European-wide basis, but on a global basis, because the World Health Organization is working for all UN nations. So this is the discussion now. Should we really continue to have separate agreements with tobacco giants, knowing that there is no transparency on the issue, on the agreement? Even the agreement of 2004, we still have a lot of difficulties to really get the documents, to read them, and to know exactly what is in it and what is not in it. And the lack of transparency is really a problem when you fight fraud.
Bart Stas, thanks a lot. We'll leave you, you're free to go to the hemicycle and vote. Yeah. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.